through chronological, okay.
Yeah.
To check all my facts are right. Born in Cambridge, 1952, 6 foot 5 inches tall, or more.
Well, 6 foot 5.
Yeah. Son of a postgraduate theology student and a nurse. That can't be true. That must be on a birth certificate, isn't it?
No, that's
People
true.
aren't students there, are they?
Sorry?
Postgraduate theology student.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, he had graduated from Cambridge and was at from St John's, the same college I subsequently went to. And he was at Ridley Hall at the time. He was training for holy orders, and it seemed to be a bad idea, as was pointed out to him. And he stopped training for holy orders.
Why was that a bad idea?
No, he wanted to do it again recently. He was again dissuaded. My father's an absolute nutter.
He decided not to do holy orders and you
Sorry?
Decided not to do holy orders.
No.
But
And my mother was a nurse at Addenbrooke's Hospital.
and there's an arty background, I think.
No, not really. I mean, I think I spent only the first few months of my life living in Cambridge in a basement flat in Jesus Lane, and then we were very poor for many years. We lived in all sorts of places. We lived in, it was either Tilbury or Gravesend. I'm not sure which.
We just had water.
Yes, well, they face each other across the river. I can never remember which it was. And Hackney. I suppose not far from Hackney, actually.
I mean, there's a story about you seeing John Cleese on the television when you were at school.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was. I decided.
Sounds like a
That's what I want to do. What?
Really?
No, it's absolutely true. Actually, I mean, I'd always sort of liked him on. I'm sorry, I read that again. That was Royal Frost Report. That's it. I can do that. I'm as tall as he is.
I can't do Ronnie Corbett, but
But
you didn't actually write till you went to Cambridge, did you?
no, well, I've always found writing very difficult. I don't know why I wanted to do it. I mean, it seems absolutely. It was sheer perversity. Because I remember I was going through a few months ago. I was at home and I was going through old box of stuff from school, which had sort of found in the attic, and I came across the sort of school quote literary unquote magazine. And I thought, I'll sort of go through it to see what I had in. And there was nothing. And I can remember. I mean, every time I was asked if I wanted to write something for it, which I just felt I ought to, because I was always in plays and things, and was English student, and I used to sort of sit and worry about it and sort of tear up pieces of paper and never actually produce anything. It was awful.
Why didn't you go in for acting if you were always in plays?
Well, I mean, I really wanted to be a writer performer, and I would still like to perform. The trouble is nowadays, unless you're prepared to actually go at that full time, then you don't get an equity card. That's a major problem at the moment. So at the moment I'm purely writing, but I would like to do both.
You'd have liked to even as a kid?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't pursue it?
No, I mean, I was a slightly strange actor because, I mean, there were... I suppose I was sort of slightly limited as an actor, and there tended to be things that I could do incredibly well, and other things I just could not begin to do.
What sort of thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was...
Tended not to be asked to play dwarfs.
Yes, I couldn't do dwarfs a lot. I had a lot of trouble with dwarf parts. No, it was... I don't know. It was. I mean, there was just a very, very sort of sharp borderline between finding a character and not finding a character. And when I couldn't find the character, there was no way I could just sort of busk it and get through it. I mean, I was terrible. When I found the character, I was very good. Most people can manage and do so reasonably competently well in anything. I was either terrific or terrible, and that was always a handicap.
As it tends to be.
Yeah.
Well, what, you're interested in caricature or character or both?
I suppose character going to caricature, yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. Just the way my
By the
mind
way.
works. The other thing, I also want to be a guitarist, I've decided.
This is a new decision.
Well, I've been playing guitar for about 15 years, actually. And,
Hasn't really got a hinge down the back, has it? No.
No, it's just a bit of inlaid wood. So I want to do something about that. I'm going to try and persuade the record company who do the Hitchhiker albums. I don't know if you've actually seen there's a new one out, actually.
No.
I'll show it to you.
Oh God! Why the duck?
Why a duck? Yes.
Gratuitous duck.
Roger Marks once said.
Oh no! Oh dear.
No, that wasn't the reason at all. It was.
Or was it?
No, there is one line, one purely sort of incidental line which mentions a rubber duck in it, which the album designer just sort of latched onto and said, right, this is what we're going to do. And I thought this is crazy, but in fact it makes quite a nice and intriguing cover, I think.
So make people do double takes in rubbish.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because it was about convoy or something. Why did you go to university in Cambridge? Because you'd already lived there and knew it.
Largely because I really wanted to get into footlights, which was where all the people I admired had come from. And
what did you study then?
English in my spare time. But otherwise was...
Are you still on the acting bug then?
Yeah, well, I did quite a lot of... I wanted to write sketches and things, and I couldn't do it. So I eventually got myself into the position, myself and another couple of guys, all of whom were just on the sort of lower rungs of the sort of periphery of footlights. Sort of got together and decided we would do our own show, and I actually sort of booked the theatre and everything, and sort of put a few quid into it. And sort of started to organise the advertising. It now became a matter of absolute necessity that we actually get it written. And suddenly under that pressure I could do it. And since then I've always actually just had to manoeuvre myself into the position where it has to be done. Because I actually cannot write anything just on spec, just for the hell of it. This is something I've learned to live with.
Yeah, I've got fear as well.
It's amazing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, a girl who's a young film producer, and she'd just been off. She'd rented herself a cottage in Derbyshire for a month or something, and had just sort of spontaneously sat down and started writing a novel and got sort of some way into it. I just couldn't imagine how anyone would do that. I've been lucky since Hitchhikers has started. It has been a question of fulfilling commissions. So that gets me through it, but I could never actually...
What was your Cambridge Review called?
Well, I did a couple. One was called Several Poor Players Strutting and Fretting.
Autobiographical.
And the other was called The Patter of Tiny Minds.
Who was around footlights at that time? Anyone?
Well, who that you would know now? Griff Rhys-Jones, I was also at school with actually. Johnny Lloyd, who's the producer of 9 O'Clock News.
He co-wrote the early episodes.
He co-wrote parts of episodes 5 and 6.
How did that happen?
Well, that happened because whilst I was waiting for the go-ahead on after we'd done the pilot of Hitchhiker, it took a long time for BBC to decide to go ahead. And I was desperate for money. And I sent the first copy of that script to Bob Holmes, who was the then script editor of Doctor Who. And he said, oh yes, we like this, come in and see it. So I sort of talked to them for a long time.
As a Doctor Who idea or as a separate idea?
No, just to sort of say, here I am, this is what I do. And I ended up getting commissioned to write 4 episodes of that, but it didn't really work out as something which was going to sort of fill in that gap, because that took a long time to come through. I eventually ended up getting the commission to write the rest of Hitchhiker and 4 Doctor Who episodes simultaneously in the same week. And so that that became a serious problem. And I got through the first 4 episodes of Hitchhiker, then I had to break off to get the Doctor Who episodes done. And so I wrote those really at a gallop. And at the end of that, I was totally zonked. I knew I knew a lot of what was going to happen in the last 2 episodes of Hitchhiker, but I just couldn't sort of get myself to the typewriter sort of thing. You know, and so I needed just a bit of sort of support and help and a sounding board just to sort of get it done. So that's how that happened. But I mean, John Lloyd and I had known each other for years and sort of done some work together for years. And at one stage we actually shared a flat together, and we kept on sort of half producing ideas which never really sort of came to fruition. Oh, actually, there's one thing. I was just quite curious now. There's because it'll be appearing so late, but about 2 or 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, he and I, the only thing we actually eventually did sort of totally collaborate on was writing a couple of cartoons for a Dutch television company called Dr. Snuggles.
For no good reason.
And it was quite a fun actually. It was immense fun actually sort of working in animation. There were all sorts of things you can do.
How did you get that commission?
Hmm?
How did you get a Dutch commission?
Well, it's a company. It was being made internationally. So the script's being written by English writers, and it's being performed in English. In fact, Peter Ustinov was doing the voices. But the production company was Dutch. I mean, they were making it basically for English-speaking audiences, the big American market, England, Australia, and so on and so forth. But I gather it will be dubbed into other languages as well. And the story, the design was also English, but it was being storyboarded in America, I think, and animated in Japan. And the music was being done in Germany. I mean, it was a sort of big international operation. The writers' fees were little rip-off time there. But I gather one of the episodes actually won an award on the others here. But I think it is eventually coming to English television. But it'd be rather curious to see the sort of kids cartoon series coming out, written by me and John Lloyd.
What's Snuggles about?
Well, it was a sort of if you can imagine a sort of cross between Professor Brainstorm and what were those books about the man with all the animals?
Doolittle?
Dr. Doolittle, with a bit of a sort of cross between those, really. It was quite fun working on that, actually.
You also tried collaborating with Graham Chapman.
That's right, yes. I wrote with Graham Chapman for about 18 months on a lot of projects which didn't actually see the light of day in the end, and those which didn't really work awfully well.
What ones did see the light of day?
Well, we wrote and made a pilot for a comedy series. The series never got made because then Graham got more involved back in Python again. This is really during a sort of Python lull, and nobody was quite certain what the future of Python was going to be. Yes, we wrote this show called Out of the Trees, which was a sketch show. Which actually has some very good material in it, but it just didn't hang together properly. And
Who was in the sketches?
Hmm?
Who was in the sketches?
It was what?
You said it was a sketch show.
Yeah.
Who was in
Well, Graham was the sort of lead, and that in a way is a mistake, you see, because Graham is very, very good as a straight man. I mean, he did wonderful performances in both Brian and Holy Grail. But as a sort of upfront comic performer, he's not so strong. I mean, that's I mean, that's not a criticism. It's
No,
just,
I'll be
not playing to
careful
his
how I phrase
strengths.
it.
Yeah. No, it's just a question of what each individual's strengths and weaknesses are. And he found his strength in Python, doing those sorts of parts. And on the whole, doing the up-front comedy part, he wasn't so strong at. And who else is in it? Well, Simon Jones is in it, who plays Arthur Dent. Mark Green-Davy is in it, actually, as well. Mark Green-Davy, who plays Jacob Bigglebox. Mariah Aitken was in it. Tim Priest.
It actually got named, but
It actually got made, and it was shown. It was shown once on BBC Two on late on Saturday night against Match of the Day.
Aye.
I don't think it even got reviewed. It was that insignificant. There's some very nice things in it, but it just didn't stand up. I mean, it was not. The sort of structure for it hadn't really been found.
You went from Cambridge to all sorts of bizarre things, to bodyguards for an old state royal family.
That's right. Yeah. Where did you get all this information from?
I got found and went through all that.
Oh yes, I know. It's
Must
been
be
from
an
the
interview
interviews.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Some bizarre interviews. You get misquoted all over the place. Bizarre things will be happening to you that never did happen.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes.
What were you just fleeing in time between Cambridge and entering the big world of
Well, no. I mean, some of the jobs, like sort of building barns and cleaning chicken sheds and so on and so forth, and things that I was doing.
Stuck in there.
Were things that I was doing whilst during back from university. Then I don't know, when I left university, I just sort of got various jobs through Manpower and just sort of office clerk and that sort of thing. Doing the Arab bodyguarding was after I'd finished working with Graham Chapman, and that had really sort of fallen apart. And Python's getting back together again.
Yeah, good.
And actually, curious enough, the thing we really sort of virtually came to blows about was his autobiography he decided to write. He wanted to write it with somebody else, and I started off writing it with him.
It's a bit young.
Well, I know, it's just come out actually, it's very good. But he actually went through about 5 co-authors, of which I was the first. And I really didn't feel it was getting anywhere, because I just didn't think it was the sort of thing you could do as a pair.
Autobiography ghosted.
Right. Well, except no, I mean, it wasn't really ghosted, because he was writing it, but he was co-writing it, simply because most of the writing he does, he co-writes. And it actually came out, finally, I mean, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years later. It came out last month, and I got it read, and it was actually very good. Though I think there was one very bad section, which was the bit which he and I co-wrote.
That's the only revised version of that. But
anyway, so it was after that I was then. I mean, the sort of promise of that period, I thought this was terrific, this was my great breakthrough. And at the end there wasn't really nothing to show for it, except sort of large overdrafts, and not much achieved. And I suddenly sort of went through a total sort of crisis of confidence. Couldn't write. Had to, just because I was so panicked and didn't have any money, I had a huge overdraft, paying £17 a week rent or something. Never money then. And so I managed, just through answering an advertisement in the Evening Standard, I got this job as a bodyguard in a Arab royal family. It's curious.
were you sort of writing off to like Burkitt's Way?
Yeah, well, I was Simon Brett, who was a producer of Burkitt's Way, asked me if I'd like to write some bits for him. At that stage, I just felt I'm washed up. I can't write. I may as well accept this fact now. And but he insisted, and so I sat down to write a sketch, which I thought would prove for everybody once and all for all that I could no longer write sketches. And everyone didn't like it rather much.
something like that really. The artist did some more, so I did a few more bits and pieces. And then, one thing which had been, I spent all the time since Cambridge actually trying to interest people in, was the idea of doing science fiction comedy. And I couldn't get anybody interested at all.
This was after a Vision on the Road to Innsbruck.
Yeah, well, that was before. I actually had the title before I went to university, but it just sort of sat in the back of my mind and festered. So after I'd done those bits for Burkitt, Simon said to me, I mean, Simon was the only person I hadn't actually sort of gone to with the idea of doing science fiction comedy. And he then said to me, quite out of the blue, I think it'd be nice to do a science fiction comedy series.
Without realising you were interested? Without realising you were interested?
Yeah, and it was an extraordinary coincidence.
I know, I really don't know. It's usually okay. That's what sit with me foot on it.
And so it came to go from there.
But you also were doing. When did you do Doctor Who? I can't quite figure that out.
Well, yes.
You did one series. Oh, what was the name of the before you wrote that?
The Pirate Planet.
Oh, did you? Ah.
Right.
Oh, wonderful stills. Thinking stills in the back of my mind.
Right.
But
Sorry, do you want to sing that?
You did one series as editor.
As script editor. Yeah, so the way things went, you see, was I was writing Hitchhiker, which was really a lot of 1977. I can't remember the exact sort of dates now. And we were making it at the end of 77, beginning of 78, it went out, starting in March 78. And during that time, I was actually living at home with my parents. And the actual fee for writing the first place was miserable. I mean, worked out something like £1,000 for the 6 episodes, which for something over 6 months' work is not a lot. And so I was thinking, well, I'm such a slow writer, and I've been through. I mean, it looked as if Hitchhiker might sort of do okay, but I mean, and there's no precedent for radio series actually sort of meaning very much in the long run. So when I was then offered the job of radio producer.
No, you didn't take it.
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I thought, well, having actually been from living with my parents for the last year, and although radio music isn't really an idea whatsoever in life, I think I ought to do it to me because I'm going to earn £1,000 over 6 months. And then, yes, during those 6 months, Hitchhiker began to be a success.
Yes.
I began to feel sort of slightly rested. Particularly as a sort of job, I was producing weekending, which is quite fun actually. The first job I was given to do was compiling a program about practical jokes. I had to go off and sort of interview Max Bygraves, Des O'Connor and people. I thought, this what am I doing here? And but I wasn't really quite certain what to do about it, because I knew people had sort of put themselves out to help me get this job and so on and so forth. And it was a staff job rather than a contract job, and sort of leave after 6 months would be ridiculous. But then I was actually offered the script editorship in Doctor Who, and I took it, which caused immense sort of rumpus. And I did that for 15 months, whilst at the same time. And that was a terrible time. I mean, it was great to begin with, whilst I felt I was actually managing to sort of juggle all the balls at the same time. Because at the end of 78, I was so I was writing the first book. I was trying to get down to writing the second series, but that kept on being put off. And I was script editing Doctor Who and having to produce lots and lots of storylines for writers, and also doing one last fairly major job as a radio producer.
What was that?
Well, I produced this show for Christmas, which is a pantomime called Black Cinderella 2 Goes East, of whom everybody involved in it, the writers and all the cast, are all ex-Cambridge footlights. So we had Rob Buckman was playing Prince Charming, and Peter Cook was playing his brother Prince Disgusting, and John Cleese played the fairy godperson, and John Pardo MP played the fairy tale Liberal Prime Minister, on the grounds that you only get Liberal Prime Ministers and fairy tales. The Goodies played the Ugly Sisters, and Joe Kendall played the Wicked Stepmother, and Richard Murdoch was
Sounds like a nightmare.
It was very funny, actually. It was terrific, but it got absolutely, the BBC gave it no publicity whatsoever.
I remember the title.
And it was
It takes up half a column in Radio Times to actually get the title back.
no, it was a funny show, that I liked that. And
Actually, what does the script editor in Doctor Who do? Because people don't know what
Everything.
script editors are.
everything. Oh god.
Someone comes in and writes the script, and there's an actor.
Yeah, we see, I
don't
think-
need a script editor, do you?
I was very naive, you see, when I first wrote Pirate Planet, because I always assumed, and I think quite rightly had assumed, that basically writing the script is the writer's job, and coming up with all the ideas is the writer's job. And so I worked very, very hard on those scripts. And then when I came to a script editor, I discovered that most of the other writers assumed that actually getting the storyline together and writing the script is the script editor's job. And so all that year I was continually working out storylines with one writer, sort of reworking out storylines with another writer, helping another writer with the scripts, doing substantial rewrites on other scripts, and putting yet other scripts into production, all simultaneously. And when you're doing 26 half hours in a year, that's a hell of a lot. And at the same time writing the first book, and also trying to write the second series. It was an absolute nightmare year. As I say, I mean, for the few months when I was actually in control, it was terrific. Because when you feel you're actually in control of all that and actually getting it done, and having all these continual storylines in your mind simultaneously. So, a writer suddenly phones you up at sort of midnight, and you've actually got to know exactly what he's talking about and exactly what his problems are, and actually swap them out. And you actually get very high on that as long as you can cope. As soon as you stop actually coping, it then becomes a nightmare.
Nigel Neal did Quasar State. He was writing a 3-part series for Thames, a feature film, and a novel, all of which were different and the same story.
Oh, right.
And he couldn't remember what he was doing.
Oh, right.
That's the same sort of thing. But at the end of Doctor Who, I mean, your Hitchhiker really taken off then, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Become a cult, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I finished working on Doctor Who this January.
Has it gone out in America?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Lots of.
I went to the World Science Fiction Convention, or whatever it was in Brighton. The Americans loved it. Were you at that?
Yeah.
I heard you got fan mail from Harrisburg.
Oh yes, we went through it with the Geiger counter. Hello, John. Hello. Yeah.
It's quite good. You mean last night's Friday night?
Yeah.
Quite good.
Oh, there were 2 sketches of mine on it actually.
Oh, which ones were they?
One was the Paul McCartney one,
Oh.
and the other was the girl on the telephone. Trying to replay those.
Yeah, beaten up by Paul McCartney. I missed the introduction. Was it Cambridge or Oxford, that bloke? Cambridge.
They're all Cambridge people.
They were all Getting Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy went all over the place, and there was a novel and a record and a radio series, and suddenly exploded, didn't it?
Yeah, and all that I was trying to sort of keep going. I'm just going to get the bottle. I now have a company, and everything just goes to the company called Sirius Productions.
Serious production,
Yes.
damn fine. Who thought up that one?
Me, I decided I wasn't going to have a. Most people I know who have companies have silly names to them, so I decided I wasn't going to have a silly name.
Have a serious name. When Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy became a series. I couldn't imagine it on stage, Ken Campbell doing 90-minute stage shows.
Well, it's been on stage 3 times, which the one which got all the notice was the one which didn't work.
That
The
Ken
first-
Campbell.
Well, Ken Campbell did 2, you see. First did one at the ICA in 18 months ago, it was, which went very, very well and was very successful, and the audience was put on the hovercraft. The action all took place around the edge of the theatre, and the audience was on this hovercraft in the middle, which went from, it quite literally, it's true. I didn't believe it till it actually happened. And we were actually turning away 1,500 people a night from that show, but only getting 80 people in because that's all we could fit on the hovercraft.
You're making this up.
No, I'm not. No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And then Theatre Clwyd Company did it as a touring production in Wales, where they did the whole lot, which meant so they would sometimes do them 2 episodes in an evening, and other times they'd do the whole lot in an evening, which is a long evening. And that actually went very well. And then Ken wanted to do it again. Yes, actually, it was strange because I'd just agreed to give Ken the stage rights to do another production before I went to see the Theatre Clwyd production, which was. When I knew it, I didn't know anything about Theatre Clwyd. I just thought it was going to be a load of Welshmen going around saying "boya," and actually it wasn't at all. It was a very good production, and so they were then offered the old Vic, but to do the production. But by that stage, I'd already given the rights to Ken, and his production company decided to go for broke and put it on at the Rainbow. And really, I should have known better, but I had so many problems to contend with at that time. I wasn't really thinking awfully clearly. And really, the thing at the Rainbow, really, well, as you probably know, it was a fiasco. Largely because, the first two productions had worked well because they'd been performed to relatively intimate audiences. Theatre Clwyd, I suppose, the largest audience they could get in was about sort of 400 or something like that, and the ICA was only 80, isn't it? But you put it in something the size of the Rainbow, a 3,000-seater theatre. Then, because Hitchhiker by its nature tends to be sort of rather slow-moving, and what is important is all the detail along the way. You put it in something that size, and the first thing straight out of the window is all the detail. So you then sort of fill it up with earthquake effects and lasers and things, and that in the end simply works to further swamp the detail, and so everything was constantly being pushed in exactly the wrong direction, and all the poor actors are sort of there stuck on the stage desperately trying to sort of get noticed by the audience, that sort of vast distance, and so it closed down early. Despite the fact, you see, the thing was that in fact, the audiences we were getting, if you put them in a West End theatre, would have been terrific audiences. Getting sort of 700 a night or whatever. But in a 3,000-seater theatre, 700 is not a lot. Particularly when you're paying for 3,000 seats. So the whole thing was a total financial disaster.
And the audience fuel and emptiness around them as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that was a mistake.
There was also talk of a film at one point.
Yes. Well, I've been into that twice, and each time I sort of backed out again, because the first time, because we were doing it, I knew we were going to be doing it for telly anyway. And I knew on telly we can do it all. Now, I felt the sort of first deal that was being set up, the American guy who was going to be directing it, I began to feel we were actually talking about different things, and he wanted to make sort of Star Wars with jokes.
Who's the director?
Well, having said that, I think I better not tell you his name.
Hold on.
Anyway, we seem to be sort of talking about different things.
Right.
It just, and sort of one thing after another just seemed not quite right to me. But I was still going ahead with it. And I suddenly realised.
He was going to produce it well, was the director?
No. The producer was this young American girl who's like, I mentioned earlier, she'd just been away in Derbyshire writing a book for fun.
We suddenly realised.
Yeah. And so I suddenly realised that the only reason I was still doing it was the money. None of which had changed hands yet. But so I suddenly thought that's the sole reason is not a good enough reason. I had to get rather drunk in order to believe that.
That's a good reason for getting drunk as well. Well, it isn't, because I mean it's short-term thinking, the money.
Right, yeah. But I mean, it got to the stage where I just had to sign a piece of paper and would instantly have £50,000 up front. So it was I was quite pleased with myself not doing that. So I thought, well, I don't, there's no point at the moment doing a film of it. And then the whole thing became sort of reopened again when Terry Jones of Python, who's a great friend of mine, said, well, he'd like to think about making a film. So I then thought, well, that sounds like a nice idea. But I didn't. The original idea had been to do something which is based fairly solidly around that first series. I just didn't want to make that again. Having done it on radio, on stage, and on record, now doing it on television, it just seemed like a pointless waste of time to go and do the same story again on film. So it would be much more worthwhile to do a new story. But then we came across the problem of having to do a story which was, on the one hand, totally consistent with what had gone before, for the sake of people who knew what had gone before, and on the other hand, was totally self-contained for the sake of people who didn't know what had gone before. And that began to be a terrible conundrum. I just couldn't solve it. So in the end, Terry and I just said, well, look, it'd be nice to do a film together, and I hope we will do a film together. But let's actually just start from scratch again and not make a Hitchhiker, which I'd be far happy to do.
You're not involved in Time Bandits?
No.
Well, I was surprised when the TV series came along, because I wouldn't have thought it was visualisable. I mean,
there's some very good things.
yes, I saw the first episode. I mean, some things like the bed sitting room works on radio, it doesn't really work in television, because you can't believe a man becoming a bed sitting room.
Well, you see, I think one of the... I mean, obviously there are things you lose when you move on to television. And that what you actually see restricts what you imagine, whereas on radio what you hear provokes what you imagine. On the other hand, there are all sorts of things which I think are worthwhile. In that, I mean, one of the great strengths, I think, of television production is wonderful animated graphics, which is superb. But also, you see, it's good for television because if you've been sitting down to do something like that for television to begin with, there are all sorts of things you would not have done, it wouldn't have occurred to you to do, like having a narrator who talks all the time. You just don't have that on television. But having been committed to that in one medium, and having to translate it into non-medium, you should then have to begin to find solutions to problems which normally wouldn't have posed themselves. Actually finding those solutions is quite interesting. So that's how we got those graphics. Then you would not have, if you're doing a Tony production at the BBC certainly, you would not just gratuitously attempt to have one character with two heads. You know, because it just poses far too many problems. But being committed to that, we had to do that. So they built this head, which is quite remarkable construction, because I mean it's moulded from Mark Davies' own head, everything else, the neck movement that way and that way, the eye and the mouth and the eyebrow and the cheeks are all radio controlled, and it's an extraordinary feat. Which is something you would not have got, except by the fact that you are translating from one medium to another, and therefore committed to things you otherwise wouldn't have tackled.
That's Jim Francis.
That's right, yes. Jim Francis is terrific.
Yes.
Well, we have one or two sort of very remarkable people working on the show. Jim Francis is one of them. I mean, he's done some excellent
He's done every
things.
episode, isn't he?
Yes.
Series.
Also, this guy Kevin, I can't even remember his surname, which is awful, who works for the animation company, and he was largely responsible for getting the company the job, because he was a great Hitchhiker fan.
It was an outside company, is it?
Yeah.
Dave Jervis just put it into electronics.
Dave Jervis has a different job altogether, because he's the what's the actual title? Electronic effects operator, which is not which is totally separate from graphic design, which is what these guys are doing. No, Jim Francis. Dave Jarvis, and his role will be in things like obviously all CSO shots. Electronic inlays.
Yes, and I thought that you programmed computers to do all the readouts and things.
No, all the computer readouts are all animated. In fact, I mean, I'd assumed that one would do it as computer graphics. And you actually use a computer to do it, but apparently that is incredibly expensive. And it's
the BBC.
but so it's done graphically and done by animation instead, which is actually more effective.
How far are you into it now? About 4 episodes?
No, we've just done. We're rehearsing episode 3 at the moment.
You must have done number 1 very early then. I saw it with Edinburgh.
Oh yes, because again, you see,
was that a pilot?
Well, it was a sort of pilot. I mean, pilot can mean several different things. I mean, in some cases, a pilot is something that is made and broadcast to see how the audience reacts to it. This is a different sort of pilot where the BBC had said, we're doing the series, we're committed to the series, we want to make the first one separately, so we'd see we're doing it right. So then we then have the opportunity of changing things and so on and so forth. In fact, that isn't quite how it worked out, because when the bills came in for the first programme, there was a certain amount of stun shock, and there was a certain amount of backpedaling on whether we were going to do the rest of the series or not. But then they said, yes, we will go ahead, but try and be a little more careful.
That's a very saleable commodity.
Yeah, well, I hope so, yes.
PBS presumably, but not anyone better. How many years of your life have you actually been hitchhikering? It must have been about 3 years.
3.5, 4 actually.
You said
It
you
would have been. I suppose it would have. The first time it actually sort of crept into my life would probably be just the end of '66. So not '76.
Yeah.
I think. I may be wrong.
Because when you said you always had the back of your mind the idea of doing a sort of a comedy SF series, is that because you're interested in SF?
Well, it's funny. Yes and no. I mean, I always thought I was quite interested in it until I actually discovered.
You met people.
Yes, and discovered that I knew nothing about it whatsoever. After I sort of discovered this sort of enormous subculture, and I actually find. I mean, I always used to enjoy reading the odd science fiction book, but I wasn't sort of particularly knowledgeable about it. I now find it. I mean, having been doing this and Doctor Who at the same time. And I find it virtually impossible to read science fiction, which is simply a measure of the fact, a measure of the extent to which I've been saturated with it. I'm a bit nervous at the moment, being sort of pigeonholed as a science fiction writer, which I'm not. I'm a comedy writer who happens to be doing science fiction.
Because I mean, A, you're pigeonholed as a science fiction writer, and B, if you wanted to do a serious science fiction book, you couldn't, because you're
I don't think I could do a serious book anyway, because I mean, jokes would start to creep in.
War and Peace with a bit of laughter.
Yeah.
But you know, like actors who want to, comedy actors always want to do Hamlet or anything.
No, you see, I actually think that comedy is a serious business, you see. That's why.
And very difficult.
It's funny actually, I was being interviewed the other day by a woman from Telegraph magazine,
Good God.
who had read the new book. And she was asking all sorts of questions about it. And I was being sort of fairly flippant about it. And she got rather, I think she got rather disappointed, because she thought she expected me to be much more serious about it than I was being. I think that comes about because when you're actually working on something, you have to take it absolutely seriously. You have to be sort of totally, passionately committed to it. But you cannot actually maintain that if you're going to stay sane. So in fact, on the whole, when I talk about it to other people, I tend then actually to be quite flippant about it, because I'm just so glad to have gone through it, you know. Say, oh well, it's just that. And it's just jokes. Because she was saying she actually thought the second book was much weightier than the first, which I was surprised about. I certainly wasn't aware of that. Presumably you haven't seen it yet.
Not the second one, no. It's in paperback, isn't it?
Yes, it doesn't come out for another 3 weeks.
Oh, and this is
So that's what it looks
This
like.
is the second series, is it? I presume the reason the first book didn't have the last 2 episodes in was because you hadn't really written them fully yourself and weren't happy with them, is it?
Yeah. Well, in fact, I also wanted to keep those last 2 episodes to the end of the second book, which involved immense sort of mental gymnastics to try and work out how it was all going to fit together. And in fact, you see, I wasn't awfully happy with the second series, and so
Why weren't you happy?
well, I don't know. It was
Starhawks?
You see, the first series was written and rewritten and rewritten, and worked on very, very heavily. The second series, I was having to do under immense pressure whilst I was doing other things as well. And there was a sort of element of desperation really in writing it. And also, you see, the fact it was the first time around, you know, it was my own sort of private little world that only I really knew about. And this writing a sequel to it was like running down the street naked, you know, because suddenly it's become everybody else's property as well. So, and most of the second series was first draft as opposed to sort of fourth draft. And to my mind, it never really knitted in quite the same way. So that book is about 2/3 of it actually comes from episodes 5 and 6 of the first series, and the first third of it is a restructured plotting of aspects of the second series. And I think it works out much better like that. It eventually meant I had to write the book backwards, because I couldn't get the thing started. And it held me up and held me up and held me up, and eventually I wrote the last bit, and the bit before that, and the bit before that, and the bit before that. And the beginning worked out more or less by process of elimination.
I read somewhere in broadcast where the BBC Enterprise had turned down all,
Oh,
this,
yes.
all this wonderful merchandising at the beginning.
Yeah.
Presumably because it was just a 10:30 Radio 4
Yes, they didn't know anything about it, and
science fiction would never catch on.
yeah, right. And curiously enough, actually, the first episode of Hitchhiker went out in the same week as the first instalment of Pennies from Heaven, and exactly the same thing happened to both of them, because the BBC turned down the book and record from Pennies from Heaven, which went on to become very commercially successful.
Surprised about
Also,
that. They should have picked up Pennies from Heaven, the record.
Yeah.
We'll see them turning down, but they think it was too upmarket. But Marvin the Paranoid Android, I believe, came from a specific.
Andrew Marshall, yes.
Andrew Marshall, who is one of the writers of The Berkis Way and of Part 1. And he's actually got a new show coming on Radio 4 sometime soon. I think it's about 2 weeks' time. She partly co-wrote with John Lloyd, called Hordes of the Things, which is a sort of parody of Lord of the Rings. And it's going to be very silly, I think.
But you seem to be sort of involved in the whole sort of second Monty Python, or after Monty Python lot. I mean, there's the end of Part 1 and there's Berkis Way and Hitchhiker.
And not 9 o'clock news.
And not 9 o'clock news. And that seems to be sort of the generation after Monty Python or something.
Yeah, I suppose so. And the thing is that
Because Monty Python was the goodies and I'm Sorry You're Dead Again and
Yeah.
sort of things.
Yes, but you see, out of that generation, one sort of major thing sort of sat on the top of the pile, which was Python. And I think, I mean, all my way through Cambridge, I really desperately wanted that to happen all over again. I wanted actually to function as part of a group of writer performers. But you see, a sort of radical change had come over the way things were organised, because in those days, the time that produced Python and so on, the writer-performer was the kingpin. And this was true both in Footlights then and in the shows which those guys then went on to do. So Python, it was the guys themselves who were doing it, who'd come together, and a producer was given to them just to sort of get it onto the screen and make it work. In my day, I found this immensely frustrating and annoying. It had become a producer's show in Footlights. So a producer is there to say what the show is going to be.
He's a student producer.
Yeah. Or more likely someone who was at Cambridge 2 years previously who comes back to do it. And it's the producer's show, and he says, right, well, I want so and so and so and so to be in it, I want so and so and so and so to write it. They're appointed. But the producer calls the tune. I think that's wrong. And that's what's true of Not 9 O'Clock News. And I think, I don't know, I get into trouble for saying this, but I think that's wrong. I think it just makes it sort of slightly too artificial. It was really my. You see, my year in Cambridge was full of immensely talented people who never actually got the chance really to work together properly, because they were all working for somebody else rather than actually saying, let us get together and do this. So I think it's very fragmented now. So we've got on the one hand Hitchhiker, which is written by one person, with actors employed to do it. And we have Not 9 O'Clock News, which is a producer's show, being sort of driven from the back seat, as it were. And there's nothing I really feel that is a sort of central, solid thing to have come out of it.
Like the Beatles, and they're really being a sort of a central.
Yeah, right.
Punk
Yeah.
thing, so.
Yes.
And you get out of the trap of being the man who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the rest of your life.
Well, by doing something else, really. I
You
mean,
have to go off and write something totally differently.
yeah. I mean, I think we'll probably do a second TV series. I mean, that's by no means certain. I think it's on the cards. And if we did, then it'll be a totally new series written for television, rather than adapted from the second radio series. And that, as far as I'm concerned, I think will be about it. I want to write. I want to write a book from scratch to prove that I can do that, because I've now written 2 books which are based on something I've already written. You know, so it's not quite kosher, you know.
My boy. A comic novel.
Yes, and I would like to write a stage play, because that was the one major failure Hitchhiker's had, which is the Rainbow Show. So I want to, and it was never written for the stage anyway. It just sort of got moved over. So I'd actually like to try something specific for the stage, and I'd like to write a film.
Yes.
I mean, these are all sort of fairly sort of wishy-washy ideas at the moment, but that's what I was doing. I mean, at the moment, having had sort of 3 years of frantic work, I'm spending these sort of 3 or 4 months just sort of gently overseeing the television production, which isn't really work, but it's keeping me occupied. But as I was virtually becoming a zombie with work, and it's quite nice at the moment just actually not to be under any pressure.
It's quite nice also to go on to rehearsals.
Yes, well, I mean, I go.
To still keep getting letters about it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. And also doing hundreds of interviews, driving up the wall. Yes.
No, and I'm about to sort of get into another. Or I did a big round of interviews
For the second series, radio series.
for the second series and the publication of the first book. So round about the end of last year, beginning of this year, I was doing interview after interview after interview. But I'm about to embark on that again, with the second book coming out and the teleseries coming out.
Which will leave the country.
So, but I haven't done many for a while now.
So it says it's all new and wonderful. Well, thank you very much indeed.